Good afternoon, everyone. This is Andrew Kimmons with Kimmons Toolworks, and today I have a video a little bit about more of the nitty-gritty kind of processes behind everything. And I think before I jump right in and start actually showing videos of some of the parts of the process and some of the steps, I thought it would be a good idea to walk through a little bit of the complexities of everything and explain kind of why I do what I do, how I've discovered these, some of the stuff that I've ran into. And I also, obviously, I have some mortise chisels set out in front of me that are shipping today. This is 3 separate orders, and I wanted to include these because you don't have tools like this sitting around and not show them off. I love these. This is actually the first time I've ever seen mortise chisels in ebony. I may also be the first ones in Babinga. I'm not 100% sure on that, but these are definitely the first ebony ones, unless I'm totally forgetting something. But here's a look at them, and they all the mortise chisels come with these end caps on them. That's included in the price. And these end caps have little tangs and ridges on the tangs, and they're cemented in place in there, and quite durable. The entire structure of these is quite durable. It's got a 3/8 tang that goes way back in here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the construction and even bring up the leather ring in there and how those are done. But they're beautiful. They're made to last. I have them smudged up from handling, but these will be shipping today. And I did want to talk a little bit about the sizes. I currently make the mortise chisels, like for standard orders and stuff like that, from 1/2 inch, this is a 1/2 inch, all the way down to 1/8 inch. And I do them in 16th inch increments from the 1/2 inch down to the 1/8 inch. But, and I've always said, if you have your heart set on, I want a 3/4 inch mortise chisel, I will gladly do that. It's just a special order thing. I would have to start with bigger stock. I always start with the smallest stock that I can get away with, because frankly, starting with something just bigger than that wastes material, and then that would just cost more in the end. But yes, I will make a bigger one if you want. I've been tossing around the idea, actually, ever since I've started making the framing chisels. I've been thinking a lot about making really big, like giant mortise chisels to go along with the framing chisels, because somebody on one of my things on Facebook made the comment that timber framers love big mortise chisels, and it's like, you know what, that really makes sense. So if you're one of those out there that wants some really big mortise chisels, like framing chisel size mortise chisels, I would be absolutely willing to take that on. That would probably be a lot of fun. Yeah, so that may be something that'll be coming in the near future. Now, enough about the mortise. Now, let's do the Babinga. I love these. I do. That's why I do this for a living. I love these. And they're fun. I get to have so much fun. It's not even, I can't even describe it. I love my job. Anyway, let's talk about the job itself a little bit. I have a bunch of things out here that are not in frame, a bunch of handles at various stages of the process. And I know a lot of people think, when you think about making a handle like this, or a standard one that doesn't have an end cap, for example, something like this butt chisel handle here, you think, oh, you might just have a piece of stock, put it on the lathe and turn it, or CNC, just sand it really quick and you're done. Like, I've seen a lot of manufacturers, that's how they do it. They have bar stock, they just feed it through the machine, the CNC rips it out and sand it, and you can get those chisels for 80, 90, $100. And these are not that. When you're pushing, well, a regular socket tang chisel, 1 inch and under, these are $180. Now, for the extent that I go through with these, to only be, $80 more than other high-end ones on the market, it'll show you just exactly why my hands are so beat up, because it's a ton of work. So anyway, let's talk about it before I just get totally off topic. Here is an example of a blank that I milled. This is from a local local tree. This is maple. This is spalted maple. And this tree is actually about 30 feet from where I sit. That's about where they start, other than the milling process. That's a whole nother topic, but they start roughly here. This is where the handle begins, is a 1.5 by 1.5 by 6 blank, or slightly bigger, just depends. Milling's not a crazy accurate process. They start here, and generally speaking, I will turn them to an oversized type round, and oversized because a lot of times they have to dry and they'll shrink. And with figured woods like this is an example of one. They will actually warp too. They'll shrink, they'll warp, they'll end up all over the place. You can see it maybe a little bit. I don't have a really extreme sample of that on hand. I mean, I'm sure I do, but I'd have to dig through a bunch of stuff. But the really highly figured ones will warp. They definitely always shrink. So if I wanted to turn it to my target diameter, then when it shrunk and warped, it would be garbage because it would be too small. Because I have a minimum diameter that I have to operate within. And you don't want to turn it so small that you blow through that minimum diameter and throw your wood away. That's not fun. So they go into a size kind of like that, an oversized round. From that point, I dry them, and I dry them very slowly, and I dry them all differently depending on the wood itself. Some woods take way more time than others. Some woods just need to be dried slowly to avoid cracking, and it is what it is. Generally, the harder the wood, the harder it is to dry, the longer it takes, the more you run a risk of cracking, which is why a lot of the exotics a lot of times cost a lot more than like a maple. I don't lose a whole lot of maple due to cracking, warping, going out of spec, stuff like that. It's a very versatile material, relatively easy to work, whereas, you know, in the instance of cocobolo, it might cost me, you know, whatever cocobolo prices are right now, you know, 15-20 bucks for the piece of wood, but I end up having to charge 30 bucks for the handle because some gets lost and some of it doesn't work out. So I have to determine averages to go off of. That way I'm not just losing my butt on material building a set that I massively undercharged on the handles for. So we end up here. From this point, once they're dry, I make sure to get them to the minimum diameter for stabilizing. Reason being, when you stabilize wood, you're soaking up that $100 a gallon resin. So this gives me the opportunity to get them to the diameter that I want, which is really the minimum size that I want, and or actually you could say maximum, and inspect the wood. It gives me a chance to look at it, see if there's any cracking, anything going on, any checking. And this is part of the grading process. If they pass this part, they'll continue on to stabilizing. And that's a big part of the reason why, I mean, there's no sense in stabilizing this. You're throwing away huge amounts of resin for absolutely no reason, and that makes it more expensive. So now we got everything good, past the first part of the inspection, going into stabilization. They go into stabilization, they come out looking pretty rough. You can't really tell the surface on them very much. A lot of times there's resin stuck to the outside. So once again, we go back to the lathe after they've been stabilized and cured. They can actually even move and warp a little bit still again throughout that process, because part of the stabilizing process is, I mean, you heat cure it. So you end up at, you know, 240 degrees for however long it takes. But this is an example of a burl. This is a maple burl that has been stabilized. You can tell on the end there's excess resin on the end. And that's never a bad thing. That just means it lost some, but because it was very saturated. So once again, we go to the lathe, all of it gets turned off, and this is another chance for an inspection. And I check it out again, make sure no cracks or it didn't warp out of spec or anything. In the instance of burls, this is a time when I have to start looking for anything that may need filled, because burls sometimes require, you know, CA filling and stuff like that to get them to be a solid turned piece, because the stabilizing resin really only fills so much. It's very thin. It's not like a gap filling substance. So anyway, we get it to this part. This is kind of skinned off to where we can check it again. Once again, another inspection. And in the case of chisels that require end caps, this is the time when we go and we mount the cap. So I set it up in the lathe. I get the rear cut for the cap so that it's a good, snug, tight fit. That gets done and mounted. This right here gets cut to the correct length. And you can also tell on this one that this has been cut to where it's in sync with the cap, because the cap may end up being clocked a few thousandths off one way or another, but you want this to be trued up to your lathe chuck. So skin that. And that's the point where I go onto my metal lathe that I've actually I've made a cutting tool for it, specifically for cutting wood. And I have a few different examples of different types of chisels at this stage. This is, for example, a mortise chisel with an end cap. That's how I set the base dimensions of it. I want this to be a dimension, that to be a particular dimension, and that to be the right size for a ferrule. At that point, the ferrule gets pressed on. This is a Tang style example of that with a ferrule mounted end cap. From this point, that goes on to another lathe and it's turned by hand. Here's a socket style example with no cap. So a lot of different stuff going on here. From that point, they go onto the onto my wood lathe and they're turned by hand to, I actually don't have one in that middle stage, but let me just use this one as an example. You know, all of this part is turned, and then this has to be flipped and put in the lathe again to cut this into sync at the right diameter with the end cap. And all of this requires special tooling. This requires special fixtures to hold everything, stuff that I've designed and machined to actually do the job. It's incredible how much specialized tooling it takes when you design a product and you get, you know, everything the way that you want it and you've figured it out your way. That's all fine and dandy. You can't buy tools. You can't just like go on Amazon and get special fixtures and stuff like that. It's stuff you have to build from the ground up, and that has been a massively expensive and time consuming part of this endeavor, is a lot of custom and specialized tooling to be able to do a lot of the things that I like to do. But see, here's an example of a mortise chisel, and I wanted to mention this one's different. This one has a bulge in the middle, kind of an ergonomic bulge in it. This I had completely forgot about, but if you want a mortise chisel with that type of handle, I can definitely do that bulge in the middle. I don't do that normally just because of the fact that it feels a little too big for my hand. It doesn't have that kind of classic feel. This is my mortise chisel template. Since they're turned by hand, you can tell the difference there. But this one's turned, they're obviously turned by hand, but this one and that one, I just didn't prefer that feel, but it is an option. And this is a Tang style after turning with an end cap. And you know I have to do it because I love it. A framing chisel handle at the finish stage with the sockets so freaking tight on it you can barely get it off. That's a good thing though. That means it was accurately made. So those are some of the various stages of the process when you're actually working the wood. From that point, the end cap itself needs finish. So it goes on to another lathe that's better for holding these, and it's hand finished. I have to put on my, my reading glasses and get a really, really good close look at it and finish the end cap so that they get finished like, well, you'll probably not be able to see it in this, but you want a good finish on them. I don't want to, because at the point before I finish these, they're scarred, they're scratched, there's all kind of stuff, they've been worked, so you have to get creative a little bit. And that's the whole thing, is that every step of the process requires complexity and creativity, and if you don't, you end up wasting a lot of material. Like, if I were to skip the step of, let's just say this was stabilized and I throw it on the lathe and I mount the end cap and I don't really clean it off or skin it or anything, and then I just go onto the automatic lathe and I cut it and oh crap, it's defective. Well, I wasted a lot of time putting that end cap on there. Not only did I waste time putting that end cap on there, I'm going to salvage it because it's a good end cap, so I'm wasting time getting the end cap off of there. In addition to that, there's a reason for every seemingly overly complicated part of the process. And there's a reason why it's an expensive tool. There's a lot of inspection, and that just is what it is. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about, with the mortise chisels, you can see on my template right here that there's a recessed area. That recessed area is to fit the leather in there. You can see on this 1/4 inch Babinga that there's a leather ring in there. I know it's not the greatest image ever, but I cut the leather rings for that as well. And it basically looks like a washer with a 3/8 hole in the middle that's cut to fit the exact size of these sockets. And I have a handful of different colors on hand to get the best match really for the wood. Different browns. I have this all that's left of the black for whatever reason. I used it for something else. I have a tendency to do that. And I know a lot of people have requested that I make leather tool rolls. Well, I think that's awesome, and I would love to do that. I am kind of learning and acquiring things to work with leather. I am not let's just say you could at this stage get a much better tool roll from somebody that does that professionally, and they've devoted their time to it and they specialize in it. I do tinker a little bit. This is something I made, and it looks like a tiny wallet out of leather. I just hand stitched that together, and it's kind of funny. It's a coin flip. I like silver coins. I always carry them around to remind me what real money is and that paper's nothing. So it's just kind of a good luck charm, and I found that that's a fun way to carry it, and it was a fun project that I did with my daughter. So anyway, I think I'll go ahead and I'll wrap it up there. And I wanted to do this video. I have another video of me cutting them to this stage, and it's actually with these Babinga handles. And I wanted to just kind of share the why, talk about it a little bit before I go ahead and share that video. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up right there, and I hope everybody enjoyed this and it was somewhat insightful. I do want to mention, if you want to order any of this, I have so many, almost 200 styles of chisel at this point. I do take custom orders pretty much anytime, and you can get a hold of me. It's andrew@kimmonshandtools.com. You can also message me on social media. I have the Instagram and the Facebook as well. They're Kimmons Hand Tools. And yeah, definitely, I like to talk to people and deal with people one-on-one. That's part of the experience. I know a lot of people want me to, kick off a website that's thoroughly just got everything on it. They can go and they can click and do whatever, but that's impersonal. I don't like that. And frankly, I would have thousands of categories with so many options, with literally endless handle options and 200 blade styles. it would be such an endeavor to put a website like that together, for one. For two, I couldn't keep up with the workload of the people going in there and just clicking and buying stuff. I would have to just freeze everything and get caught. I've been almost 4 months behind before, and I don't want to get in that because I don't want people to have to wait that long for their tools. But anyway, I like to deal with people one-on-one. I mean, these are custom tools. This isn't like Amazon. It's not like go click, throw it in your cart, you know, whatever shows up. I want to meet you. I want to talk to you. I want to figure out what you like. I just want it to be a very custom experience, and I want to meet my customers and deal with my customers. A handful of them that I talk to on the phone, and a handful of them that have my phone number and we text and stuff like that. And that's cool. That's the way it should be. You know, this isn't a mass production buying experience when you get tools from me. It should be a better process than that, because I want to help you get the things that you want to get. That's my end goal here, and that's the way that I like to run it, and that's the way that I want to run it. And frankly, if it became impersonal, I wouldn't enjoy it anymore. I like to, you know, the relationships that you develop with your customers are literally the most important part of something like this. So that's the why. That's why I tell everybody, hey, if you want to order custom tools, or you have an idea, or you don't know what you want and you just want to talk to me about it, go ahead, send me an email, andrew@kimmonshandtools.com. It's also posted on my website, which is kimmonshandtools.com. You can go to that website. There's a big window at the top that says for custom orders, contact andrew@kimmonshandtools.com. And we can figure out what you need, what you want, what your goals are. That's the great part about it. We can obviously discuss pricing and things like that, because it varies all over the place depending on what you want. You know, some of the base options really aren't really that expensive for what they are, for what goes into them, and I just work my butt off 80 hours a week to make it work. But anyway, I hope you go ahead and like the video. That's important too. I know I'm guilty on YouTube. If I watch videos and stuff like that, I don't like it. So please like and subscribe. That way you get to see all the videos coming up with the processes and stuff like that. And I'd like to grow this thing into, you know, something fun. It doesn't have to be huge. I don't need 250,000 subscribers, just people that are interested. So anyway, have a great day out there, and I will see you next time.